Now you can see, as you look down upon the city, exactly where these things took place. On the lower peak is where the Temple Mount was eventually built, and at the highest peak of Mount Moriah is where Abraham took Isaac, prepared an altar of stone, bound his son to the wood of the sacrifice. Many years later, they began building a wall around the city of Jerusalem. And the wall on the north side of the city is only about 12 to 15 feet tall. How do you defend a wall that tall? What they did is they quarried out all of the stone in front of that wall because Mount Moriah is excellent quarry material. They removed it and built the wall of the city of Jerusalem. And then we see that the masonry is only about 12 feet high at the highest peak, but yet you have the sheared away mountain, and it makes the wall effectively about 60 feet tall. And there, of course, you see the location of the temple in which it was built later. Now, in this particular shot, superimposed over this drawing is a picture out of an archaeological resource in the city of Jerusalem that shows that the wall, which is pictured there in brown, the wall of masonry is only about 12 feet high there. And then you see carved into the side, you see this is what is referred to as Solomon's quarries. Because that stone was so valuable, Solomon then chiseled into the side of Mount Moriah, and that is where the stone was taken out to build Solomon's temple many years later. Right there in front of Solomon's quarries in the old roadbed, this is the area that Josephus said at one time the Romans had over 2,000 Jewish men hanging on crosses along that wall there. They actually ran out of lumber in the city of Jerusalem and had men waiting in line up to a week for the next cross to become available because it took up to a week to be tortured to death on the Roman crosses. Now, they did not crucify men on hills far away. They crucified them right in the roadbed. In this area that was excavated down through there, numerous 2-foot deep sockets chiseled into the solid rock roadbed have been found in there, and I've held in my hands numerous 9-inch nails that were brought up from that site because of the thousands of execution of the Jews that had taken place there. This is what became known as the place of the skull, and that's where the executions were done. And when they sunk those crosses into those 2-foot deep sockets, then you were looking eye to eye, face to face with your brother, your father, your next door neighbor. And you just had to sit there in front of them and watch them day after day as the life bled out of them. Up to a week it took. A very torturous death. Here you can see the wall of Jerusalem. Now this one is about 20 feet high, but then you can see how Mount Moriah is sheared off, and then of course there's a lot of debris in that particular area. Now Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 of the Common Era. And when it was destroyed, the wall of Jerusalem was broken down, the temple was destroyed, and the wall all the way around was leveled. But many years later, Suleiman the Magnificent came back in and he rebuilt the wall. And in the 1840s, you would walk out what is now called the Damascus Gate, right straight out onto the dirt roadbed, which was many, many feet of debris and fill at that particular time. But now when you walk out the Damascus Gate, you have to go up about 25 to 30 feet to get to the current roadbed upon which all the vehicular and pedestrian traffic now travels along that wall, the north wall of the city of Jerusalem. That's where the buildings are built up there. But as you're walking out that gate, you look down to the right, and there is the only gate in the city of Jerusalem which has been excavated down to its original foundations and the foundations at the time of Herod's temple. This was the gate that Yeshua of Nazareth walked out on his way over to the execution site. Most of the streets over in Jerusalem and what is called the Via Dolorosa is actually 20 to 30 feet above the actual level that it was at the time of the Messiah. And we see that basically what you're looking at now is 30 feet of debris and then all the buildings built on the many times that Jerusalem has been destroyed during that period of time. But this one gate, as you walk across that threshold, you are walking across the very stones that the Messiah himself walked across on the way out to the execution site. Now, the top of the hill, as you see there on the left, that is now an Arab graveyard. That is currently the highest peak of Mount Moriah. And it was in this area, right along here, that Ron Wyatt, who had been down at the Red Sea crossing site, and they were doing the filming of the chariot parts in the strewn for a mile and a half on the bottom of the Red Sea, in which he became very badly sunburned. They had to stop their diving, and he went back to the city of Jerusalem and had to wait 2 more days until his airline ticket home. He was walking in the area where this red arrow indicates, and as he walked along this area with the gentleman from the Department of Antiquities, he said that he reached out with his left hand, and his left hand pointed at a pile of junk that had a dead cat on it, and with his mouth he said, "That's Jeremiah's grotto, and in there is the Ark of the Covenant." He said as soon as he said that, he drew his hand back and realized this is, first of all, a ridiculous statement to make in front of a professional archaeologist, and that he had never even thought about looking for the Ark of the Covenant. But what the man said that was accompanying him was even more remarkable. He said, "That is wonderful. We'll take care of your permits, put you up with a place to stay, take care of your food and your laundry. When can you start?" He had no idea. He was due back at work as a nurse anesthetist back in America, and after 6 months he came back and he began digging in that area. It took years of excavation, but this is the area that has been excavated, and they got down to the original cross sites, and many of these things are available to see on video. In fact, I met recently with Jim Baker, who took a professional film crew down there with him before the demise of PTL. He took the film crew down with him to the crucifixion site, videoed all this area down there, and hopefully we'll be able to show you some of those things very soon. But this is the area of the crucifixions. Now, I have to discuss something and show you something that transpired in the spring of 1999. It was that year in which there was no rain in the land of Israel. In fact, the Sea of Galilee was down well below the red level, and there was no rain happening in the land of Israel this last year. But while there's no rain falling, up on the Temple Mount there are 4 cisterns which are carved out of solid stone. Those cisterns at one time had water diverted into them so that water could be drawn out for the use on the Temple Mount. But what happened is that during a time of drought and no rain, water began gushing into those 4 cisterns up on the Temple Mount. Why? What was going on? I received a call from one of the original founders of the Temple Treasures Institute asking me to come out to his home to discuss things concerning the Ark of the Covenant. When I got out there, we ended up staying up into the wee hours of the night, and he began laying some things out concerning the Ark, and he knew that I was involved in some of the things concerning the Ark, and that I was there teaching most of the time behind closed doors to people there concerning these things. And he was the one that said that it was several years ago that he was sent down into Ethiopia, because he, as one of the original founders of the Temple Treasures Institute, had to know, and the Temple Treasures Institute had to know, if the Ark of the Covenant was in Ethiopia. They felt it was very, very improbable that it could be there, but yet what they did is they got together a large sum of money, and he went down into Ethiopia and bribed his way into the compound or the church in which they say the Ark of the Covenant is. He paid a very high price in that bribe to get down into that church. As they then took him all the way down inside, they then showed him the Ark of the Covenant. And he said, "Where is it?" And they said, "Right there. If you're supposed to see it, you'll be able to see it. But if you're not supposed to see it, you won't be able to see it." As he was looking at nothing. And he said, "No, this is not going to work. I want my money back." And they said, "No, what you see is what you see." And he stood there and realized it just cost a very high price to find out that there was nothing there. But that's not really that surprising, because the whole legend of the Ark of the Covenant being in Ethiopia goes back to a legend that Solomon's son, by the Queen of Sheba, Queen of Ethiopia, who, Solomon's son, being raised in Jerusalem, then made a copy of the Ark of the Covenant